Thank you so much, Ali. Andreas, great to have you with us. As Ali was mentioning, direct from Malaysia. Those of us who might know Andreas Wojcikis, he's a trainer, a coach, a recent author from what I gather, and I could be wrong there as well. But I know there's a book coming out. Absolutely.
That's right.
A change management guru, and he's someone who sort of worked with leaders, sort of helping them and their businesses grow as per their aspirations and beyond. As said, currently based out of Malaysia. Andreas, welcome. Great to have you here today. Okay, Andreas, change management. It's the buzzword these days, and as the quotation goes, a bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the turn. Are we at that bend?
You make me think, Shiraz, and I love that. And we didn't rehearse this at all, but I think the bend will keep on bending for many years to come. And I think we need to really adjust everything. But I would like to make a shameless plug here, and that is to one great man who's from Pakistan and who lives and works in Malaysia, and he's a common good friend for a lot of us, and that's no other but Javed Jaffrey, or as we know him, JJ, who works as the head of media and digital at Unilever. So I'm sure he's watching. JJ, this is for you. And thanks to Ali. I've been watching the conference and it's fantastic. And I've learned so many things in the last few hours, right? I think how can I say this, Shiraz? The paradigm is shredded. There is no paradigm anymore. Everything changed. And I don't think that will ever come back to be whatever it was. It will be different, be it a hybrid or be it completely different. It forced us to adjust to something completely new. And I also, to your point about the bend, I think that what it really did, it gave us a glimpse of how geometric proportion change really happens. And so it happens faster every day. And what we know today, I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, right? We only know that we are resilient, we can adapt, and we just need to put a mindset to it and take these measures that will enable us to cope better, that will enable everybody to cope better. It was tough for everyone. Malaysia is perhaps a little bit more ahead in some areas on digitization, but I'm sure we will talk about a couple of examples, but I know other places are not there yet in totality. And so what does that mean? And how can we as a whole really help each other? I think what really also happened during this time, if you remember the notion of stakeholder capitalism that grew up in the 50s and 60s, and then Friedman came in and sort of pushed it down, right? And now we see it thriving again because we realize that we're not alone. And whatever I do here in Malaysia affects you there in Pakistan and vice versa. And we are so interconnected, and we have to work together towards that. I think when I look at it, there are three areas that we need to really focus on. The first one is technology. The second one is people. And the third one is readiness. Technology, simply put for me, is about realizing that this is not a tech world. It is a tech-enabled world. And there is a huge difference to that. And I say this because the fundamental human truths don't change. I've been a CEO in different companies across Asia for the last 25 years. And even when I started my career in 1992 in New York, and back then internet didn't exist, the fundamentals of human interaction didn't change. Technology enables things, but change happens because people are not happy, or because they are forced to. Technology just enables that. And so we need to look back into the force. I loved all this term. I love the term working from vacation. And then it was discussed about the psychological safety. So do these two contradict? And we as human beings, how we're going to cope? Because it was one of the panelists before us that said, you know, what is really missing is the human interaction. And when people are at the office, they can talk to each other in a different way. Everybody's tired of the Zoom calls. And then it is about readiness. And I'll just say only one point here, and that comes to my mind. And that readiness is that we as leaders, we need to make space. We need to make space for reskilling our people, because if we don't make that space, and our expectations is that people will learn to cope and adjust and be trained, while at the same time doing what they are doing every day for their job, it's not going to work and they'll break. And that's a huge responsibility for leaders and companies to really have. And that will constantly change. That's just ongoing bend.
Yeah, and you spoke about technology. I would like to touch upon that as well. So look at it from Pakistan's perspective. It's a huge place. There are pockets where that digital transformation is happening. Digital transformation sort of has become a buzzword as well these days. For some of us, it's a way of living, right? It's happening. It is there day to day. We are working on it. We're improving things, and the speed of that is amazingly fast. Then there are others who are adapting to it. They realize that if they have to thrive, if they have to grow, if they have to be successful, this transformation has to happen. And then we have that particular group which thinks that this is quite complicated. And that's a vast majority of companies in Pakistan, if I look at it. Put aside the multinationals, put aside the huge local companies that we have, but majority of the businesses don't really understand and realize how important it is for them to upscale, and then sort of move forward with it. A lot of people, on the other hand, they're scared also. They think that, okay, if I adopt this, it makes my job easier, but will that make us irrelevant as well over a period of time? And then they sort of become reluctant to really adopt that change. So looking at it from Malaysian context, which I think is a little ahead where Pakistan is right now when it comes to digital transformation. How do you see that thing sort of happening in Pakistan, or how do we convince leaders that this is the way forward and this change needs to happen and has to happen now?
It's sometimes tough, right? And you know, when you are used to do certain things certain ways for so many years, decades, and it works, there comes the mentality that, okay, don't break it, you know, if it's working. Why should you do that? And then we become very myopic, and we don't really go back in history to see in chunks of time how this has really changed and how it changed the world. I'm pretty sure that the people who were operating wagons back then, before when Ford introduced Model T, they were in the same denial that many are today. Take agriculture, right? I said a tech-enabled world. Agriculture will always be super important, but it will change on the way it can enable itself to be more efficient, farmers to be more productive for their crops, for the way they're doing business, for the way they are connected to the world, and technology to predict rain or to see how fertilization goes and all that. And so I think eventually the universe, and I believe in the universe will make something to happen that will force the naysayers and non-believers to really have no choice but to change, right? It could be a famine. I don't know. God forbid, but sometimes things happen like that. Look what COVID did. I think we were in a lull before. You know the story of the boiling frog in the boiling water, where the temperature rises very slowly. He gets very comfortable in it until he dies. And we were in such a lull, I think, before, because we've been talking about digital transformation for eons in Malaysia, but still there were farmers who never really got digitized. They never used Facebook. And now all of a sudden in the last year and a half, everybody from Cameron Highlands is selling their produce on Facebook Live. They auction fish, and you have fishermen who get to it. Maybe they don't know, but their cousin or their nephew or the kids know. And so they find their way around. And this situation really forced everybody to do that. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that's the silver lining on this bitter pill that's called COVID. And now it's up to the big corporations and the governments who get this to really establish these right policies. It's not about giving money out. Give somebody a fish, right? You'll feed him for a day, learn them, teach them how to fish, and they'll be fed for life. It's exactly like that. And that's a responsibility that I think they really have. Take big corporations, for example. Big corporations could really demand and help all their suppliers and all the other companies that are dependent and interconnected to them to really learn from them and do it. And so I think that there are many pockets that deny it, but it will be just a matter of time that necessity of what's happening will really force everybody to adopt. There is not going to be any way out of that. And COVID is not the last pandemic we will ever see in our history.
Yeah, I'm sure. Hopefully, last one in our lifetime. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you also spoke about mindset change as well, and I sort of just tell you how difficult that is to manage and handle. Also, I look at my family, my home. We're like 6 people in my household. So I have one person, my mother, who's sort of exceedingly paranoid about the situation at hand, sort of afraid of doing anything. Everything sort of goes on. There's an alarm sounding. Then I have my kids who are extremely careful about what they do. My father, who's basically doesn't really care or bother about what's going on right now. And me and my wife, who are careful but a bit adventurous as well. That's the challenge for the leaders as well, right? So when they want to sort of manage that change or bring that change into their organizations, they'll have all sorts of mindsets to take care of, to understand, and then sort of have a strategy put forward that can really help the business longer run. So do you think that the principles of change management, they've changed because of what we're facing right now?
Right. That's a great question, Shiraz. I love it. My thinking is no, they don't change. The principles are the same. Look at marketing. I've been doing marketing. I've been a marketing man for decades, since early 90s, right? And everything changed. Technology changed. Back then, no internet, not programmatic buying, but the piece of marketing were the same. Storytelling was the same. Storytelling was the same from the beginning of humanity. Fire under the stars, right? So the principles of change will not change. I see this change happening in 4 phases, basically. I call it the C's of change, right? And I know we have just about 5-6 minutes left, but we start with stability. Everything is good, and we are happy, we are content. And then something happens and we get into the strife mode. And here's where we're upside down. Everything changes, like exactly what happened with COVID. And then we get into mode of searching. What works, what doesn't, we experiment, we learn, and we come to that realization, learn, unlearn, relearn, otherwise you're gonna be the illiterate of the 21st century, as Toffler said, right? And then once we really become a little bit familiar, then we start stretching it. And I think that's a good thing, to learn more, to become more familiar again. And I think that the most important thing here would be to really keep in mind that change will continue happening from now on with even faster speed. So we need to change our mindset to embrace it, because to your original question, to loop it back to that, I don't think that bend on the road will ever uncurve anymore. It's going to be like a spiral. It's going to keep on happening. And either we adopt it and we'll learn how to live within that, or if we are living today because the road is going to be straight and smooth tomorrow, I think we are in for a big surprise and disappointment. So we need to change our mindset and be happy on how we do that and help each other to thrive. And lastly, I think that if you are a business, think about business from your point of view. What works for you? That doesn't mean you have to do everything digitized, but you need to try. You need to learn, experiment, fail. I always say we need to learn how to fail, or we will fail to learn. And that's a mandatory prerequisite on what this situation has brought really to us. And we got to do it now, right now.
Yeah. And I think the leaders are sort of in the spotlight as well right now, because they've had to cope with this changing world, also the changing environment, sort of making sure that they communicate effectively with all of their team members, and the message really gets across consistently to everyone, sort of working remotely. And I know, so being in HR, and you yourself also sort of a trainer, trainings have to be, I mean, the trainer's mindset has to change when you're doing it remotely versus sort of doing it in front of a class physically. So I think leaders have to sort of make sure that they're able to keep that connect with their employees as well. Exceedingly important, as I said earlier, so that the message really gets across. At times, another thing that I hear over here, Andreas, and maybe you can relate to that, when I'm sort of standing there in front of a crowd and talking about certain things, a lot of people at times mention that you're talking from a position of privilege, because you have all the tools at hand, you have all the facilities available. Maybe you're at a position where you can take a call and make things happen. Maybe we are not in that particular space, so we're not as privileged. I'm sort of using that word, I don't know why, but it sort of makes sense. Do you think that that has any impact, again, whether you are someone, as I said, of a big company or in the government, or someone running a small business who maybe is not as privileged?
I think we all have a responsibility, right? And it is a responsibility at different degrees. And your question is so heavy that is impossible to answer in. And we have 3 minutes left, literally. I'm keeping an eye on the time for Ali, but I think everybody has a responsibility. There is a lot of politicking sometimes. There is a lot of money to be lost and to be made. And human nature is like that, companies will want to profit from the circumstances. All of these things are universal in the world. I think when we strip all that out and we work, think, and function from the premise that our future is interconnected, then, and it starts with small things, with us, then everybody has to do something about that. And I do believe that in that, our experiences and our knowledge can be a critical factor to really make a difference. If we sit and wait for only the governments or the big corporations who have the means, financially at least, to instigate change will happen, then it is really silly, because we're just sitting here waiting for things to happen, and we play the blame game. We play the complaining game, and that is not really good. Instead of doing our bit, a catalyst is something that sometimes is invisible, but a catalyst can create a humongous change. So how can we be catalysts for positive change and really, one person at a time, bring something positive about? Otherwise, we're going to sit here complaining and talking until the cows come home, and even then, nothing will happen, and it will become even worse. So it's up to us. I always say, if it's to be, it's up to me. And I will stop complaining and do something about it. Educate a person with what I know. I started my company in August last year, and it has nothing to do anymore with any of the tech. It only focuses on leadership, on managing change, and of what I call power skills, not soft skills, about emotional intelligence, about self-awareness. How do I become a better person, a better leader, and empower others to be also? And I think that's fundamentally important. So everybody can play a role instead of only waiting for the big guys and the governments to really do it, because the nature of things is slightly different. We know that.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much, Andreas. We're sort of running out of time. I'm sure we can sort of talk about this topic for the next few hours as well if we wanted to.